I'd like to introduce you to Steve Wills as he helps us to speak the language of procurement.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please don't stop. So, good evening, distinguished guests, and it's a great pleasure to be here presenting to you. In the introduction was mentioned procurement and the notion that not everybody knows about it. So I've spent my life with my mother. That's interesting in itself. God rest her soul. And my mother used to say to me almost on a daily basis, "What is it you do again?" And fortunately, during my career, I got a job at the Olympic Games, and I think towards the end, she's kind of visualised me in a tabard at the Olympics, probably directing traffic or people. So at least she died happy that she kind of knew what I did. But I wanted to talk to you this evening about procurement, and I've kind of expanded it a little bit to talk about minding our business language, but it stems from a lifetime of what is it you do again? So that's kind of the theme this evening. So I've spent this lifetime, I've managed to be a Chief Procurement Officer, a CPO, or the people at the top. When I was starting out, they used to be directors, they used to be big bosses, and then they all got the C-suite, the chief. So I was a little disappointed, to be honest, ladies and gentlemen. I was a little disappointed that I didn't get called a director with a massive, in fact, offices were all gone by the time I became a CPO. It was something called open plan. So I didn't even get my name on the door. Sorry? Is what I was hoping for there. So that's what I became, and I worked with AXA Financial, Aviva Financial Services, a few companies that you wouldn't have known en route to that in manufacturing, and then with the mighty London Olympic Games, where I learnt the word unprecedented. Unprecedented. Every time there was a problem, it's unprecedented. So I learnt to use that to cover myself over time. In case I didn't know something, or something went wrong, it was unprecedented. But it really was the numbers, the kind of things that we were doing was very new and very different. We have an institute, a chartered institute, no less, of procurement and supply, and I've been a board member and I'm a fellow of that institute. So I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. The test tonight is to see if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have a business called Procurement Central. The idea behind that is to put procurement at the centre of a business instead of in a cubby hole, in a dust. I don't know if anybody remember the advert. There's a phone ringing and you walk down this corridor and it's a dust. I think it's one of the beers, Heineken or something, and it's the complaints office because nobody ever goes there. So that's my idea of procurement. It's in a dusty office where nobody goes, and I want to put it at the centre of businesses. So make procurement great. So Procurement Central, what do we do? Well, we like to make people happy. We like to make people happy, he said, looking around the room, looking in desperation for some smiles. We like to make people happy. So this is us in action across the world, in Africa, in the Middle East, and Sunbury upon Thames, and Hastings, and other wonderful places that we get to go to make people happy, to teach them about procurement, to talk to them about procurement, to make them aware of what it is procurement can do in a business, and to develop those people. These are some of the names that you'll probably be familiar with, that we work with, where we go. The likes of IKEA, Jaguar Land Rover. Again, big blue chip companies here and across the world who are seeking to leverage the best from their supply chains, from their procurement department, from the money, from the billions that they spend each year with suppliers. So a little bit about mind your business language, or adapt your business language. In my case, the language of procurement. You'll see in a moment some of the kind of terminology that we use in procurement. We like, as specialists, we like to huddle together, and we like to identify with each other, and we like to use our own little language. It makes us feel important, it makes us feel special when we're working in the business. But when I come into a meeting like this, or sometimes if I'm speaking in a general business environment, it's of interest to people. We don't really understand it. We don't really understand what procurement is. And it's not surprising because we've changed the title of what we do a number of times over the years. We've changed the name from buying, from purchasing, to procurement, to try to get across that it's a much more strategic business function. So whenever I meet people and I say who I am, they usually ask me for a mini explanation of what procurement is. And it's this notion that specialists have a language, have a set of jargon, a set of phrases that they like to use, because, as I say, it makes them a specialist and it makes them credible when they're working in the business. It was mentioned in the introduction about the mighty Lord Sugar. I met him once. He didn't laugh at any of my jokes, but he was friendly enough, so I was happy with that. So Lord Sugar, and he refers to procurement shopping for the company, going shopping, the professional shopping department. He also said, as you heard in the introduction, that procurement's one of the top three. I think he was being amusing. I think he was being a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But Lord Sugar also said procurement's in the top three most important elements for a business, along with sales and product. So it deserves to be understood through the language that we speak. Now, some of that is, shall we call it, technical language, but also it's modified. We need to modify it because my language could set me apart and I could become isolated and not involved in the big decisions. So I need to make people aware of what procurement is. Without dumbing it down, but meaning how do we translate that into the business benefits. So acknowledging the different cultures that I move through across the world, making sure that I can adapt procurement and supply chain and adapt my language so I become accepted. Because if I become accepted, then people trust me, and if people trust me, it's a bit like a fund manager or an independent financial advisor. If they trust me with the company's money, I can deliver big benefits to the business. I can make sure that the business gets benefits and results on the back of that. People can be quite, business people can see the money as their own money, rather than the company's. The marketing budget, the HR budget, it's mine, it's all mine. And my job is to see me as the trusted advisor and to work with them to make sure that we can spend that money professionally, spend it with the right suppliers, make sure that those suppliers deliver the right goods and services at the right place to the business that they would wish for, and do more. Find efficiencies, find innovation, find partnerships with our company. This is what my mission is, this is what my hope is with business, and this is what I teach my delegates when I go around the world. It's difficult sometimes for people just to fully understand from a word or sometimes from the phrases that we use. And let's just have a look at some of those phrases. When we're talking with phrases like meat sounds an interesting one. The most economic advantageous tender. The use of KPIs, key performance indicators, measures that we'll put on people, on suppliers, to make sure that they perform, and they give us the right level of quality. Quality is one of those things where you think you want the best quality, but if you get the best quality, you end up paying more money for it. So sometimes it's about the right level of quality. Sometimes it's about TCO, the total cost of ownership. I'm always delighted, I'm always happy to find a bargain, ladies and gentlemen. A printer, that's a nice bargain. Get that as cheap as chips. And then, anybody know what you do after that? When you've only spent a few pounds for that printer, what happens a few weeks later? Ink and paper and energy. The total cost of ownership. We don't always think about all the associated costs with something. That's what I teach my delegates. So you can see some of the phrases. An RFQ, a request for a quote. We love that. We love to get together. We love to huddle together and have a bit of a group hug, procurement people, and use these expressions. As I've said, it gives us that credibility. We've come out of the dusty office. We're now a strategic procurement function. And we use this in our business lives to explain what it is we do. Transfer of undertakings, TUPE, when we're transferring people from one business to another. So these are all we join them up. We don't just use them randomly. We do join them up into sentences. We're reasonably cohesive. But nonetheless, they're all expressions that we use and what we need to do to get the business to buy in, to get them to release to us their own budgets in marketing, in HR, in finance, and to trust us is to adapt our language and to make sure we don't just use the jargon. Of course, everybody's got their own individual way of taking in information. Tonight, I'm looking at a room full of people, very attractive, wonderful people, you all are. However, you all have different ways of taking in knowledge. Some of you are blue. Some of you, perhaps, are yellow. I'm being a bit yellow tonight. And it's not jaundice, by the way. But I'm being a bit yellow tonight. It means I like to get involved. A team player is quite yellow. Involve me early on. Reds, anybody think of a very strong red? They're very direct people. They're very no-nonsense kind of people. Who's the, so we've got a bit of pointing at each other. But who's the biggest red in the world at the moment? Trump, of course he is. Of course he is. So if you've pointed at each other and you think you're a bit red, you're a bit like Donald Trump. So take that away with you tonight and dwell on that. Anybody know or anybody guess what a green is? Ever think about a green? I'm being a bit green. This is me being a bit caring, sharing, a bit empathy. How are you? When someone's late to a meeting, what would a red say to them if they're late?
You're late.
You're late, where have you been? What would a green say?
So you're okay?
You're right. So, blue, lots of details. If you go in a meeting of blue, your language needs to be lots of detail. They're going to ask you lots of questions. So everybody's got their own individual way of working. We're all, as we know, very different. And of course, there's subsets of that. I've no idea if you mix a yellow with a red, what colour you get, but anyway, there are some overlaps there. Of course, language, as I've mentioned before, I've broadened this a wee bit from just procurement to talk about minding our business language. So our body language, we all know a bit about that, don't we? Maybe this evening we've got some experts in the room. I'm no expert, but I certainly know enough to know that verbal, how we speak, the words that we use are only a small percentage of getting over some facts, some information to people. In our voice, how it's said, going back to some reds and yellows and greens, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And of course, visual is the highest of all. So we know that our body language, if we stand like this, probably, as my old boss used to say, are you chewing a wasp? I don't know what that meant really, but I think it meant you're chewing on your gum or something. But if we come, then we're not coming across particularly receptive, are we? We're not coming across particularly engaging. So it's not just what we say, it's how we use our language. And of course, we must back that up in our visual demonstration as well. It's no good saying, I'm very sympathetic, or I'm fully engaged, or I fully agree with everything you say, because that clearly is not backing up the words. So, just finishing off on body language, gives us an awareness of how we give the signals. It really can underpin, it really can emphasize the language, the meaning of the words, to get us trust, to get us to possibly even influence people along with our way of thinking. My job is to get people to trust me, to help them spend millions of dollars and millions of pounds and millions of euros. So how I do that with my words and with my body language is very important, to win that trust, to influence them, to work with me, to create positive impressions that I'm somebody that they should be working with and want to work with. Someone once said they need to like you. Well, I'm not fully sure about that, but I take their point. It is about trying to find and resonate with somebody things we have in common, to build rapport. And our non-verbal behaviours, also we're seeking something back from people. Give me something back, so we know that we have rapport. So the last slide, I know, no weeping please, no tears. The last slide is just half a dozen things to remember. If you want to be a trusted advisor, if you want to be a consultant, if you want to be somebody in business that's working with others, mind your language, convert your language, make sure that your language resonates with them in words that they understand, phrases that they understand, to become a trusted advisor, whatever it is you do. Understand the culture, understand the business. It's no good just taking what I call a toolkit along with you into a business and only talking procurement. People will switch off. People will phase out. If it doesn't mean a blooming thing to their business, to their life, to their culture, then they can't see the benefit of it. It needs to be translated and adapted to suit their business. However, it's important that you know your subject, that you understand fully your subject matter, and that you can demonstrate that. But sometimes we have an expression, don't stay in your silo, don't just live. A lot of my colleagues, they quite like being in a silo. I was asked about bringing a book along this evening, and this is one of our books that we give out, that we use when we do training sessions. And Peter, my colleague who wrote it, he likes being in a silo. He absolutely loves, literally, being in a silo. And that's his comfort zone. And that's great. But for leaders of a profession, we need to step out of that. And we need to find other language skills and ways to connect with people much broader than just talking about our specialist subject. So to do that, we need to use different language and find solutions to problems that people might have. Sometimes they don't always know if they've got a problem, but if they do, we can demonstrate the consistency of using things we've learnt before, so-called best practices. And knowledge and data, I find, always backs up and outweighs emotion. Sometimes people get very emotional about things, don't they? I've managed spend of travel spend in a business, professional travel, planes, hotels. People get very emotional about that, very emotional. As though it were their mini holiday, their mini break, whether you're sending them on business. So the facts need to be explained rather than allowing emotion to come into play. And keeping the complexity as low as possible so we can keep it simple, so we don't allow the debate or the argument to become too overly complex. And obviously we need to respect confidentiality, and we need to do something that adds value, something that people see that we can bring. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my time up. You may have heard the beautiful sound of the buzzer, very musical. So that's my session done. I'm Steve Wills. Our business is Procurement Central. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve.